Hey, it's Jody. Today we're going to talk a bit about spraying for cabinetry. And cabinetry spraying is a little bit like painting. Tom Thomson paints different than Renoir. Everybody sort of has their own styles of painting. These guns are not very technical pieces of equipment, but they can seem very daunting at the beginning of your use in these guns, and the setup of them is key. So the key to successful painting with a spray gun is always the same setup, the same measurement of material, and everybody does it differently. As long as you start recording what you're doing and learn what you should do and what you shouldn't do and what works right for you. Materials are very important when you start learning the different types of materials that you want to spray with. You'll choose many different types for many different applications, and the calibration of the gun is also very important. For example, this gun has calibration for both the amount of air that's flowing through the gun. The dial that I'm going to put onto here determines the depth that the needle is let in or out of the gun, and that controls the amount of volume of paint that goes through the gun. And then the dial that goes on the front of the gun, right up in the corner of the front of the gun, will allow you to direct the fan to go wide or very tight controlled. And some people never like to use a very tight controlled space for spraying, and then some people really like that because they're doing very finite spraying. Today what we're going to be doing is the crown molding in this kitchen. So in this case, we want to really control the gun and tune it into a very tight cone so that we're only spraying about the size of a dime. And that's probably the hardest thing about spraying, is to learn how to actually control the material, the airflow, and the size of the spray that you're going to put in. So in the setup of this gun, it's always important to make sure that all of these pieces are very clean. And we do that every time we take the gun apart. All of these pieces have to be quite cleaned, because each one of these small holes, if they're blocked even by 10%, that can change your spray pattern just dramatically, and will actually cause you to get very frustrated and spend hours trying to figure out why it is that it worked yesterday and today it's not. So using those very small detailed pieces inside of those tight orifices will allow you to ensure that they're cleaning and spraying the same amount of volume of material through them. Aside from that, the process is really learning what material you're going to use, how much to thin it, follow your setup of your gun, and then the process of actually laying down the material onto the actual substrate or back surface that you're going to be spraying on is different for everybody. I happen to use a very wide atomized droplet on the material rather than fine atomized, because I want to remove a lot of the particulate matter out of the air, because today we're spraying indoors. We can't afford to be putting a lot of spray in here like a spray booth. And so this is a very awkward thing for most sprayers to do, is actually spray inside a house in a confined surface, because these guns are made to put a lot of material down very fast and very wide fans. But when you get better at using the gun and learn how to control the amount of volume of air going through, as well as how deep the needle is controlled to go in and out, you can actually get a little bit of paint in a very small surface, much like an airbrush. And so that's what we're going to try to achieve today. So it's important to also find a paint shop that can direct you, advise you, and help you with the type of spray guns that they're used to. Because if you choose a spray gun that's somewhat different than the ones that they supply, they're going to be very frustrated in telling you how to overcome the problems that you're having. So developing the relationship with the materials and hardware supplier is also exceptionally important, because when you're sitting there for a few hours on the job site trying to figure out what's going wrong, sometimes you need an expert to walk back to the next day and say, hey, this was happening. Can you tell me how to overcome it? So this gun has already been cleaned out once at my last job, where I went in and cleaned out the gun after I sprayed, but I always leave a little bit of detergent in the gun overnight to help strip off any of the remaining material. Now this is the cap that controls the size of the shape of the cone, and by putting on this dial on top of it, it allows us to figure out how widespread the spray is going to come out. Once we get all of this put together and we dial it in properly, then let's start spraying. And right now what I'm doing is mixing the media. In this case it's called Saman, S-A-M-A-N. It holds inside of it an ingredient that's called aluminum oxide. It always falls to the bottom of the medium, so we have to mix it up so that that whiteness there that's coming off of the stick actually flows properly, is actually integrated to the material as a whole rather than sitting in 25% of it. So making sure that that's mixed well will prepare a good surface for us that is consistent, and when we spray it, it will look beautiful. In this case, the aluminum oxide clear coat was pre-mixed a couple of days ago, but it's enough time that it congeals in sort of clumps. And those clumps will actually get caught in the needle of the gun and restrict the airflow and restrict the material flow. So what we want to do is take the material and actually just run it through the cheesecloth as I'm pouring it into the can. That allows me to take those congealed pieces out, make sure that it does not clog inside of the gun while I'm spraying. If that does happen, a condition called orange peel will actually happen, which makes the surface look very poor, like an orange, and it actually slows down the speed of your spray, so it takes a lot longer to happen. By filtering it, then we get a good surface and make sure it looks beautiful. So one of the keys in the setup of your gun to learn how to control the cone that you're spraying is to lay out a piece of scrap cardboard and dial your control knobs to where you think that they should be. And this, just go and run at the same way that you would on your material, a test pattern to see how wide the spray is going to be. If it's too big, in this case I just dial it out a little bit more so I can get a tighter pattern. And that way I'll be able to control the spray right down to the size of a dime, just like that. So laying down the material is a bit like skiing or riding a motorcycle. You want to be very fluid, very smooth, and always moving. Abrupt stops are not good because it causes accidents. What we're going to do is start and run along the entire piece, run back, and try to stay moving at a consistent speed so that the material goes down flat. Now I'm going to put my mask on and we'll get started. Now what I'm going to do is switch from a cone spray, which is diagonal on my gun, to a fan spray, which is lateral on my gun. This way means I can spray laterally because the fan is straight up and down. If I turn it completely up and down, that means I have to spray up and down because the fan is side to side. It is opposite of what the actual cone directors on there on the hood are. So remember, the key to successful spraying, keep your gun clean. Measure your material, set your gun up the same way every time. Use long, smooth strokes when you're applying it on the surface. If you have any problems, go to your local supplier of your material and your gun and ask them, what am I going to do different next time? If you're a Renoir or a Thompson, choose your style, perfect your technique. Happy spraying.